with what we're facing right now, how AI is, threatening everything that we know, from job foundations to comparative differentiation to the place of humanity. You can buy into fear or you can buy into love. You've got to start with love.
Doug Merritt led one of the boldest transformations in enterprise software, taking Splunk from a $220 million perpetual license business to over $3 billion in cloud SaaS revenue. Now, as chairman and CEO of Aviatrix, he's building the network security layer enterprises need to actually secure their cloud workloads in the AI era. Most importantly, Meg and I were lucky to work for him when he led the human capital management division at PeopleSoft. Today, Doug shares why focusing on daily habits matters more than chasing outcomes, how he leads with love instead of fear through unprecedented change, and what it really takes to motivate people when their hard-earned expertise is losing its market value. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Amy. Very excited to be here with you and Meg.
We are so thrilled to have you. And, honestly, it feels like just yesterday we were at PeopleSoft together. And at the time, you were a rare and I would say remarkable leader. In fact, I would say that you and Jenny Lehman were my very best leadership role models of all time. And I'm not exaggerating.
Wow.
I think that both you and Jenny exemplified what I later or started to develop as my own leadership philosophy, which was that it was very inclusive, very human-centric, high achieving, but just really focused on building great team dynamics and motivating everyone to do their very best.
When I joined PeopleSoft, I would say two things you role modeled so exceptionally. Number one, you were one of the first leaders that was always recommending books for me to read and things for me to learn. So you really role modeled a learning mindset. You also gave me some of the best advice for starting on my parenting journey. So I was about to go off on maternity leave. I had only been at PeopleSoft for the amount of my pregnancy, so I was a little nervous about coming in and leaving so quickly. And you told me that I should not worry, but that I will find myself getting a lot more organized in the role of parenting and leader. And it just gave me so much confidence. So you really created a safe place to work hard and achieve a lot. And that was really impactful.
Well, thank you, Meg. You were an incredible leader and contributor. And that team was such a great team. Dave, Ben and Neil have a knack for bringing together really smart, really down-to-earth, really mission-driven, vulnerable leaders and vulnerable people. And you guys both did that amazing things through your careers.
Thanks so much, Doug. Since PeopleSoft, even though we could really just spend the whole episode talking about those years, you've had a bit of a journey since then, done some cool things. And so as much as you had a firm leadership philosophy back in the day, I'm curious, what have you learned or unlearned since that you was completely wrong at the time? What do you know now that you didn't know then?
The most profound lesson that I've learned over and over is there are so many ways to get to the answer. And I think a mistake that I try to be first principles driven and really try and dissect the foundation of things. And I get pretty attached to both my analysis and the path that I think will get us there. The most important thing I've learned is there are many, maybe infinite ways to get to the outcome, and be open to them. If you focus on the daily mastery and the process and release the outcome, you'll come out ahead. You're going to learn so much and incrementally improve every day, and you'll wind up with something spectacular. It may not be the path that you wrote down on paper or you thought that you would take. And that is just something I've tried over and over to be much more open to. I remember one of my leaders at Splunk, Amar Marak, is just a brilliant guy. And his saying from Bain was, be open to the 1%. Well, what 1%? And if you go to the Bain orientation, management consultants tend to be pretty sure of themselves. The 1% probability that you might be wrong. Our industry has so many super intelligent people and a lot of very opinionated people. The randomness of how things evolve is so important, right? That for me, the whole orientation of the growth mindset is steeped in curiosity and learning. And I said on one podcast, like, there is no failure, there's only learning. Right? If you really believe in learning, growth, and development as your North Star, there's no other way to get feedback than to try things. And we label them failures or successes, but they're just learnings. Right? There's so many paths to get to where you want to get to, and be open to learnings. Like, but it's hard because if you've got your objective and you're so focused every single day, if you veer off, it's like, oh my God, I'm going in the wrong direction. But most of the times in life, you wind up in a different spot than you thought. And I'm so happy I did. And it's not the spot that I wound up thinking I was going to go in. But it turns out, who knows if there's an optimal answer, but it turns out to be a good answer. It turns out to be a good destination.
How do you allow that 1% to unfold in terms of having other people kind of tell you? It's really hard when you're this charismatic CEO that's so smart and has done so much. Like, how do you let in that 1% from the people around you?
We're disadvantaged in general if you're a type A person going through our education system for that type of openness, because we're taught so young to, one, school is getting better, but it didn't generally emphasize group projects. It emphasized individual projects. And I know I was rewarded for, I like to say, I'm one of those nerdy kids. I like to sit in front. I always had my hand up. I always wanted to have the answer. And that is the opposite of work, I think. How I try and foster that is heavy on the interview cycle, is without a team around you at every level that has the confidence to voice their opinion, I can't function. Because I know, like, the more you go up in the ranks, I even hate that terminology, but the more distant you get from day-to-day interaction with customers, day-to-day interaction with the actual code, day-to-day interaction with the HR systems and the way that the org actually works, you wind up not having the same grounded perspective as the people that work in it every single day, and create an environment where everybody, like literally everyone in the company, their perspective that they bring on any topic, the beginner mind is so powerful. How do you create that culture where you feel safe being the dissenter or asking what someone would say is a silly question, but if you can create that space, the conversation that ensues is so much more rich and effective because of that. So for me, it starts with, how do you make sure you bring in people that have more of the owner versus renter mindset and have huge curiosity. I boiled my leadership principles after many years down to only 5. I think it was 9 at Splunk. And I ordered them in priority order now. And the number one leadership principle is relentless curiosity. You've got to test for that. Like, are you genuinely curious about anything and everything in the world? Like, how does everything work? The number 2 is lead with empathy. Why I've ordered them this way is being curious helps. If you're not willing to be engaged in an active listener, then your curiosity is not going to be as powerful because you need diversity and a lot of different opinions. And number 3 is purpose before action. If you do the first 2, great, but then stop and spend some time with your thoughts and distill them and try and find what are the first principles? What is the foundation? Like, what am I truly trying to get done? And then the 4th is radical accountability. Right? If you've gone through those 3 steps and you now want to do something, hold yourself and people around you accountable to actually experiment and see how far you can get. And then the fifth is really for myself because I suck at it. But I think it's really important for everybody, and me included, is celebrate success. Like step back on a daily basis, give your gratitudes, like do your morning and evening gratitude, stop in the middle of the day and, try and give yourself a few pats on the back to recognize yourself and other people that
So
have gone through.
maybe you're bad at celebrating your own success, but I bet you're
I'm
really
bad
good
at
at celebrating
celebrating
other people's success.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got this ridiculously high bar, and like anything I do, it's like, who cares? That was yesterday. Like, what's next? So I've been working on that for myself, but being clear about like, what is it that you believe, or really, how few can you get, and what do you believe is really important? And then doing everything you can on all elements of the company, interviewing for those characteristics, reinforcing them in everything that you do, performance reviews, any type of interaction or feedback, how you conduct meetings. Try and talk last. I work hard to not come into a meeting and just start talking and see where the conversation is going to go. And but it's a daily battle.
One of the things that I love about yours, outside of the fact that I really believe all of those things are important, but those are really important right now, right? Because anytime you're in a moment of change or transformation, you can't just get complacent with your understanding of the world or your understanding of the teams or your understanding of the market and where your purpose is. You really have to be able to marshal all of that towards your own point of view. So I can imagine that you're like any other business leader out there in tech, feeling this acutely. How is that showing up in your leadership team today for both how you're serving your customers and how you're helping them think through what they need to do to survive in this moment in time?
This moment in time is truly insanity. I'm sure you guys feel it every single day. I got one of the many things that drew me into tech is I love change. We moved 11 times before high school. I feel like I'm really good at change, and the tech industry is always changing. But the volume of change that we're going through right now, certainly in the tech industry, but in every dimension of society, I don't think that 4 billion years of evolution has prepped us very well for dislocations, other than those foundational elements. Right. If I step back, I know this is a roundabout way of answering a good question. I think that we've got this, if I think about myself and how I probably try and process, I've got this daily battle of love or fear. I've got a coach that has been working with me for years. And the statement that he said years ago that brought me to tears, that has taken me years to accept, is, you are loved just because you're born and you're here. There's nothing you have to do, which goes against everything that I grew up with, which is you've got to, add lots of purpose. You've got to prove your worth. But I think with what we're facing right now in a specter, with how AI is, threatening everything that we know, from job foundations to competitive differentiation to the place of humanity. You can buy into fear or you can buy into love. And what I preach within the company is you've got to start with love. Like if you are willing to believe there's a higher force out there somewhere, it's got to be way more thoughtful and capable and omniscient than we are. And it's going to all work out some way. Like, we don't know how it's going to work out, but buying into fear, buying into complaining, buying into negativity is super lazy. And we all do it. And everything around us, every article and the transactional nature of our online world feeds on that fear narrative, which I don't think is helping us. Because if the fears come true, it's going to be really, really, really bad. But we have no control over it. What we do have control over is the attitude that we assume every single day and how we want to face the world. And I went through that moment when ChatGPT was released in November of 22. I went through months of depression thinking, oh my God, the world's going to end and humans are going to be extinct. And then just got to the point of, hey, this thing's out. The genie's out of the bottle. It's got as much potential for incredible benefit as it does for all the negative things that people are worried about. And let's enjoy the ride. Like, let's focus on the potential beneficial aspects of it, do our best to emphasize those, know that every invention has got negative and positive implementations, and work toward the potential abundance, aware of all the threats, but internally within the company, which it's hard because there is so much concern and fear, I think, that we all have. Even as a CEO, it's like, could CEO be a set of agents? Probably.
Right.
A lot of what we do is synthesis, and it synthesizes pretty gosh darn well, probably better than I do. And instead embrace it. Just find a way. Like, if you're super curious, if you just go through those principles, there's so much benefit it can bring, and dive in and see what you can bring to light on the benefit side. And my goal as CEO is not to replace, like, we need people. Like, agents are here to serve humans until it becomes our overlord someday, which hopefully won't happen. And so let's lean into that rather than the fear.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about having done this podcast is that we've been living through the roller coaster a bit. 6 months ago was the bottom. And I would say in the last few weeks, there's been a little bit more of a gelling of understanding, like, what kind of skills people need. I was wondering, from your perspective, what do you think the key skills are? And how are you, like, helping your folks to figure out that path, knowing that there is this fear that their existing skills are degrading?
Yeah, I think what people are rightfully concerned about, going back to how we started about the educational system, is so much of what we've been told is the value is in the doing. I'm a great coder, or I'm a great FP&A person. Like, I can really crank out a killer spreadsheet that's multidimensional to help forecasting. And if you play with these things at all, if you haven't been hiding on a rock, like, the doing, the system is getting extraordinarily effective at doing. And in many cases, this could be a better doer than any of us, which then goes back to, all right, what's your value? Well, your value is in the experience, collective experience that you've had, the judgment that you have, the human connection that you drive, the organization, orchestration skills that you can have, but it is forcing people to be managers, to be orchestrators, rather than people that just churn out an end result, a task. And I think that's good. I think that's good for humanity. I think it gives us a ton of leverage. The debates I've gotten to with a few of the public appearances and other things I've been around, because have adopted the abundance orientation. Like, long term, this is going to be unbelievable. And I'm just choosing to believe that. And I think there's good indicators that will go there. The issue is what happens in the near and intermediate term. It's not easy to say, I'm a 40-something-year-old world-class engineer, and all of my skills are in the thoughtfulness and quality of code that I build, and all of a sudden, Cloud Code can do it more effective than I can do. Therefore, I've got to get these new skills. Easy statement. Yeah, all change is difficult because there's a process of understanding and then going through the 5 stages of grief and adopting a whole new orientation on what is my value and what am I going to do. And that is where I think we really all need to come together to help each other. And definitely what I'm trying to do within the company is, given that we can continue to drive success, like, we need to continue to grow with the number of employees that we have. Like, I'm not trying to drive AI so I can replace people. I'm trying to drive AI so I can make each one of you more effective. And the more we can do that, the more that we all benefit. Like, long-term, pay should go up. Like, there should be lots of great benefits to the productivity that we're driving, but it's only going to happen if you lean in and adopt it. But it's a transition.
Oh,
It's
right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've been saying is you're not a developer now, or you're not an FP&A. You're an executive now, right? You need these executive skills. And so are your developers developing those skills, or is that a little too far out?
Oh, no, we crafted a whole management training curriculum within our little tiny company to try and emphasize that. We've got a bunch of different assistance and training elements there that we're trying to drive, including like how do you effectively use these different tools, and trying lots of different ways. There's
So
so much
management training for managing agents.
for managing agents. That is the hard part is this kind of a combo. It's there's still humans in the loop. How you manage these agents, they do operate very differently than humans do. That's where I know there's a lot of interesting podcasts out there and excitement on. Like I'm a single operator and I've got 30 agents who are working full time and I don't have a human in my company at all. And that landscape is super different than most of the landscapes that the world has to deal with, which is like there's a bunch of humans. This company's been around for 120 years. Integrating agents into that fabric is very different than creating a brand new clean fabric that's only agent driven. And maybe that will be the destination, but it's going to take a long time before Cargill or Caterpillar or JPMC or Nike or that they can recreate that landscape. So I still view it as super human centric, but man, is it a whole different set of skills. It's been a journey for me for sure over the past 3 years.
I love how you started this with the clarity that our value, each of our individual value and our ability to be loved has nothing to do with our jobs and has nothing to do with our personal productivity. It's one of our rights as humans, and it is something that I think teaching people to ground in that first, I think is really helpful, because in any time you're being asked to change or be put in a situation where you're feeling vulnerable, if you don't have that backstop and that foundation, you're going to have a really hard time having the mental agility you need to be open to learn, because you're going to have, just a whole lot of threat and a lack of psychological safety within yourself, within your own nervous system to step up and take on something new.
And none of us do well when we're under threat.
Exactly. So I think the job of a leader has gotten much bigger. What are some of the practices you use for yourself to make sure that you have enough capacity to help people? Because helping people through this takes a lot out of you. It's a big lift over and above running a big company and managing customers and growth and revenue and all the things, the product deliveries that you're in charge of. Now you also have to help people get comfortable in themselves and in their own positions. So, what do you do to make sure that you have the reserves for that level of requirement?
So one of the other interesting lessons I went through a difficult divorce when I was at SAP. And because I want to spend time with my boys, I had to dramatically change my work habits and carve out distinct time that couldn't be intruded on in any way. And it was so valuable to me to understand that I can set those boundaries. Like work, like cybersecurity, is nonstop. Like you can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and still not enough. You're never going to get everything done. And if you want to feed yourself, if you look at your whole self, then you've got to be able to gate time so that you can take care of yourself. And delaying that, it's like, I will just work nonstop, and I'm not going to eat well, and I'm not going to exercise, and I'm not going to take time for my family or friends. I'll get to that in 5 years when I've accomplished these goals. That is not a very successful strategy I've found in life. I think you are a less effective contributor at work, but you also wind up way behind the 8 ball on things that are hard to catch up on. Like you can't catch up on you weren't there for friends when they needed you, or easily catch up on your ill health because you haven't taken care of yourself. So that helped me. Like every hardship, always you learn a lot, and it helps. And so I do have a lot of boundaries on making sure that I get exercise in every day, that I am eating, positive and good food for myself. We do our gratitudes every single day. I've tried to meditate forever, and for whatever reason, I think exercise is my meditation. I'm not great at stim meditation.
I'm the same. Total shit at it.
I wish that's
running is my meditation. Yeah.
one of the authors I love, and a book that I love is Chop Wood, Carry Water, by author Joshua Metcalfe, which is ultimately all about control the controllables, release the outcome, focus on the daily mastery. It's in a parable format. It's an easy read. I love the book. My CHRO recommended it to me, and I just fell in love with it. But I reached out to Joshua, and he's become a personal coach. And I wrote and said, I really, really love your book. Thank you so much for giving that to the world. And I wrote back, and so if you like that book, here's 3 books I think that you would also like. And 4 days later, I wrote back and said, awesome books with cliff notes. She's like, okay, well, here's 3 more. And I wrote back a week later, he goes, holy cow, this guy is serious.
He's serious.
And then I finally said, I've got this company. We're going through a transformation. Yeah, if you were interested in pairing with the company, I think you'd really help us. And that message of release the outcome doesn't work that well because we're so metrics driven and we're quarterly driven and the numbers matter. And it's a nuanced orientation because of course we got to run a business. And of course we want to be able to perform, but you can focus on the outcome to try and chase it, or you can break it down into where the tasks are really important and focus on the daily mastery. And then the outcome might be 10% less, 10% more, but I think it's a more effective way to get there. But what I really liked about Joshua is he focuses so much on heart posture. Like, how are you approaching life? What's your view on life? So we started 6 months ago a development program. We picked 15 hypos, and once a week we'll get together with Joshua and myself and those 15 folks. And it started with no agenda. And it really was just talking about with everything we're going through, with AI and the turbulence of the world, what perspective do you want to have on life, on yourself? Like, what are the attributes, the habits? And he'd recommend books and different to-dos, but it really was pretty fluid. That was a different way of trying to attack it, of like, how do you help people through it? And our hope was that if you could touch some of these hypos, they would touch a bunch of other people, and you'd start to build some of what we're trying to get done in the culture in a more grounded way.
And is that part of it, is for the hypos to then share their learnings with others?
It's a really funny battle, Amy, because our CHRO is awesome. My favorite CHRO I ever worked with, and she's very data-driven and very structured, and she wants lots of structure. And Joshua is the total opposite. And there's this constant tension between the two of like, is there agenda for these meetings? And what are you supposed to do from these meetings? And we're kind of gravitating to, because I didn't want to make it really was a chance for me to get to know a bunch of awesome people in a way that I wouldn't usually get to know them. And my hope was that they would just become ambassadors. But I didn't feel like, okay, you've got to go talk to these many people or share these things.
I'm just looking forward to the 20 years from now when one of those people invite you on a podcast to tell you all the things that you influenced them and how much you helped them, because this is really, really powerful stuff, I think, connecting with people deeply. And I am in the vote of letting it be a little bit more unstructured is really powerful, because you keep out the hyper constraint and let in a little more serendipity and opportunity. So well done.
Yeah, it's been interesting because there are a couple of very structured people and they're frustrated. It's like, what's the
great?
agenda?
I think being uncomfortable is part of growth, right? Like, why deprive them an opportunity to grow a little bit?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
So you've gone through a number of different transformations. You mentioned the current one that you're partaking in at Aviatrix, but you also had a massive transformation at Splunk, moving from perpetual license of 200 million or something to over 3 billion in SaaS. And that was something that you were flying the plane and doing the change in a public company and everything. And now the transformation is more, to AI and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that we've been exploring on the show is, what's similar and what's different. So I'm just kind of curious, like what you're seeing as being like durable problems and strategies and what things are massively different from one to the next.
Yeah. This AI one is so hard. It is so hard. We've never had the replacement of thought work before, and kind of tacit knowledge. And my core is anyone that tells you that they know where this is going to go or how to navigate, I think that they're not being truthful, because literally every day I got to reorient myself because some new element comes up and it changes the landscape. What we did at Splunk and what we're doing at Aviatrix to drive the transformations we're driving was step back and try and find the foundational items that were really, really important to change, that were kind of going to be the levers for a bunch of other changes, and stay focused on those, and then let the very complex web of consequences emerge as you gain some momentum. And we had ideas of what other things were going to have to be completely refactored or rethought within the business. But the way that they emerged wasn't exactly the way that the PowerPoint that I pitched the board, the trajectory was, but the way we accomplished them was really different. And with AI, it feels harder to do that. It's evolving so quickly. My brain doesn't pattern match the past transformations, which is why I think everyone is so like the SaaS apocalypse and why everything is so confusing right now.
In your position as managing the network security workloads, and like how are you even able to keep up, and how do you look at it as it changes so quickly?
I've been working aggressively with AI for 3 years now, and we standardized on Cloud Cowork. I love the way it works. We've got a whole host of agents. We've got, I don't even know how many MCP servers and connectors at this point in time. But I can't even think of a thing yet that I have tasked one of my farm of agents and projects with, and they've completed, and I've never been involved in the loop, and I'm totally happy with the end result. And I feel it's got my voice pretty, it knows me and our company pretty deeply at this point in time. It will come. It will eventually happen. Going back to like where are we going to find our value as humans? But there is so much work that organizations need to do to actually begin to extract the value that they're hoping for from these. We're a small 280 person company with only a handful of locations. And I came in so excited in summer of 23, fall of 23, to be 100% AI only company. And here we are almost 3 years later, and we're still not 100% AI company. And it's not the capability of the engines. There's a lot of stuff that we were trying to work around that has gotten better now. Humans have so much context. There's so much inferred understanding that is really, really difficult to catalog and draw out. And that is really how I think work gets done. Like that's why there's onboarding. It takes a long time to figure out what is that process really, and how does it really get done? And what are the small little nuances that I never actually see? And we'll get there. We'll get there over the next 3, 4, 5 years. But there's so many stumbling blocks in between now and then. And one of them is the cyber posture that I am petrified of. I think that's one of the biggest risks that corporations are going to face over the next 6 to 12 months. The stat that we saw the other day is for the organizations that have deployed an agentic stack, less than 80% of them feel like there are even adequate security controls around it.
The 20% is probably a little overconfident because they don't truly understand the question.
I would agree as well. I mean, what I've been evangelizing for almost 2 years now with Aviatrix as we pivoted the company from providing cloud networking to cloud network security. The Delta, we are the thing that delivers packets to we're the thing that protects the
Make sure you're getting the
workloads
right stuff.
cloud at work layer. There is not a company that we have scanned or that we can see from our network topology that has 100% coverage on basic network security, looking at every packet going in, where it's coming from, and every packet going out, where it's going to across their cloud workscape, which blows my mind. Right? It's so fundamental. There is not a data center that was built ever by a corporation that didn't have at least rigorous packet inspection, just basic firewalling on every packet coming into the data center from the internet and every packet going out. And every data center I walked into had a firewall per rack. Like, you at least want to know what was happening up and down that rack and what was happening as it moved to a different rack. And it literally does not exist in the cloud for most organizations. Everyone talks about identities of agents, and they're really focused on how do you stop prompt injection. It's like, that's all important. But the fundamental is, who is it talking to? And is it supposed to talk to that thing or not? The foundation of every cyber breach is lots of work in lots of different interesting ways to eventually get to critical data, a critical system, and either plant malware for nefarious purposes or exfiltrate critical data for nefarious purposes. If you don't know where the packets are going to and coming from, you're dead in the water. I'm not sure if you guys saw the Team PCP LiteLLM breach last week. Absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. It goes exactly in the narrative we're talking about. A hacker team, attack team, Team PCP, found a way to compromise the credentials of one of the most important security scanning tools out there. It's called Trivy. Aqua puts it out. And, for any of us developers, every environment, certainly an infrastructure as code environment, to make sure it's safe and we're doing our job after the developers check in their code. And as we're doing the build process, we scan the code to make sure there's security vulnerabilities or not. They stole the credentials. They found a way into Trivy. No one even knows how many developer credentials they stole. One of them was a set of developer credentials from one of the most popular middleware tools within an agentic stack. It's called LiteLLM. It's a bridge between the user asking a prompt and the multitude of engines that they go against that are enterprise guarded engines. So you don't leak your sensitive data to the public engines. Got the credentials from lots of different environments. One of them was LiteLLM. It injected 2 malicious builds in the pipeline of LiteLLM that went to the public repository for anyone that used LiteLLM. And the malware's job was super simple. They planted a backdoor, but the core job, that you think about any enterprise, millions of queries going through it. What does it need to have? It needs to have the credentials and keys to all the systems you connect with. Simple job. Harvest the credentials, encrypt them, send them to a Team PCP server in the Netherlands. Sucks that it came into organizations, right? That is an upstream supply chain attack. Very difficult to detect. I'm getting it from a public repo. You can't do code scans. It's a binary. Unexcusable that those credentials went to the Team PCP server. It didn't go to LiteLLM.ai. It went to LiteLLM.cloud. Like, that is a simple URL scan. And the fact that there's not network security on every workload, and certainly the agentic workloads, is a travesty. And so my mission right now, and why I'm so passionate, is that our way of life literally depends on our online environment. I cannot book a flight. I can't pick up my pharmaceuticals. I can't do anything without being online. We need that to have a moderate sense of security. What's going to stop us from being displaced by agents? There's so much work. There's so much work that these corporations have to do to be able to actually have effective environments to do the work that we're all hoping that humans and agents in a positive combination can do. So I'll give you another example that happened to us on how thoughtful you've got to be about this environment. Our CISO is a guy named John Chen, who was the head of security architecture for Zoom for all their go-go years, 2019 to 2025. So he went through all the chaos, if you guys remember, when they're having difficulty both with the service because of the volume, they had their issues with China. And so a very deep hands-on technical CISO. He was a Cisco network engineer before that. So our environment's really buttoned down. We've got a bunch of agents. We got a bunch of MCP servers doing some really cool stuff. We had a benign breach 3 weeks ago, and we're using Aviatrix as well as Wiz and CrowdStrike and everything you can think of. Like, we're buttoned down. One of our support engineers was trying to help a customer, and the agent was helping him and doing a great work. And at the very end, the customer says, "Hey, I'd love a future roadmap for the area that you're talking to me about." And the agent's like, our guy's like, "Oh, awesome. Like, let me go ask my agent. Generate a roadmap for me, please." And the agent, because it was sitting in the cloud, did not have credentials to create a PowerPoint. It could create the PowerPoint. It couldn't park it anywhere. And we had it protected with our distributed cloud firewall so that it couldn't go to the public internet to stop the problem that we just talked about with LiteLLM. It found another workload in the same Kubernetes cluster that had internet access. And it's just trying to fulfill its job. Benign breach. And through that access routine, spammed 8 public shareware sites, found 2 that would allowed it to put a PowerPoint in, sent the link to the support engineer. Like, no one knew. Support engineer's like, "Awesome, customer, here you go.
Got a
Download this
PowerPoint."
An hour after it happened, we got notification from CrowdStrike because it was, trying to monitor that Kubernetes cluster, but it doesn't have network security. And we decoded the whole thing. It's like, oh my God, one communication channel that we didn't think of. It was a super quick fix. Like, it was.
So yeah, but it wasn't a failure. It was a learning, right?
There's just a learning, because people talk about the bad guys taking over these agents and how do I stop that? It's like most of the cyber breaches are not that. Most of the cyber breaches are well-intentioned employees that didn't know that this was sensitive information. I just shipped it out of the company. You just magnify that by 100x, 1,000x, because you've got even more naive agents that are very sycophantic and very, very good at fulfilling their task. And how do you stop it? Well, many different ways, but you better just have basic network controls. Like, that would have never happened if we had anticipated that one communication path and the thing couldn't have gone on the internet. It would have come back and said, "I'm sorry, I can't generate you a PowerPoint."
I think there's a really important pattern in here. Most of our systems are built for humans at human pace, and they're starting to get gummed up because agents don't operate at human pace. And everybody's excited about that, like, oh, they're so fast. But some of our guardrails are tied to the fact that humans are slower. And so they might stop and think once in a while and realize, hey, that seems a little weird. But to your point, agents are very task oriented, and they're like, oh, that doesn't work. Let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. Like, a human would never try those many things, because at some point they'd be like, well, this is kind of absurd. But there is no sort of absurdity governor in an agent. It's just, get me to the task, get me to the task. I'm going to try every possible thing. And so in a sense, it's a feature, not a bug, in the way that we have our workflows, because we've built them over time, but they've created a barrier or a boundary condition that protects us a little bit. And so as we start to go down this path, I think those of us that have been in tech a long time and have built systems can very clearly see that agents do what you tell them very quickly, and they do it without thinking, and that the blast radius of what could go wrong goes well past your ability to imagine or predict. I'm starting to think that there's like a little bit of an AI Dunning-Kruger going on, where those of us that are really hands-on have this point of view of like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. There's so much to learn. Keeping up is so hard. And then the certain percentage of people that are really comfortable and confident that, it's all going to blow up and things aren't going to work, and so it won't really work here, are more relaxed about it. But the reality is, I think it is going to take our collective first principles wisdom to build this future state, because it's not just about a little bit of automation here or there. It really is about rethinking what is possible when you're working with technology and what is a bad idea. And it's not necessarily going to be a technical limitation that draws that conclusion out.
Agree. And we can leverage the constructs that are already in place, which humans have a tough time with also. There's like with a big debate on social media and phones for kids. Right? What I've said over and over is based on all the research and all the laws we have in the books, there's only 4 answers. It's totally safe, don't worry about it. Or they don't get access to it till you're 16, 18, or 21. Every law to try and protect children because of their cognitive ability centers on one of those 3. Or redo psychology and figure out that those age ranges were wrong and come up with new ones. But you don't have to do a lot other than to determine when is someone cognitively ready for that technology. And when I think about AI and security, the OSI 7-layer stack, it still lives. It's still like, we no longer see most of it because we're putting virtualized workloads into the data center. But for something like security, there are 3 core elements that have existed for 80 years of our life. There are entities, I'd say humans, but now human and non-human. There's an actor consuming compute, talking to an actor consuming compute. That's our entire world. So what is the foundation of cybersecurity? Well, you better have a pervasive and effective and consistent actor security strategy. Because if you want to stop something from happening, you have to be in the runtime. So stop the actor, and a pervasive compute strategy. I can shut down the device, and a pervasive network strategy. I can sever the network connection. If you've got those 3, you've got 90% of the cyber landscape covered, or 80 or 70, you've got the majority. You've got your foundation in place. And that's where I think people are losing their mind on AI because it is so different and it's happening so quickly and there's so many potential vectors and things to focus on. And it's exciting and it creates all kinds of transactional thought candy for us. But let's go back to purpose for action. Like, what's the foundation? If you want to secure these things, what do you have to focus on? If you can't answer those 3 questions, and compute in the cloud isn't the thing. It is on-prem, it is in our real world, but most of the workloads are ephemeral. They're not attached to dedicated compute. So, the way that CrowdStrike works, it's a brilliant technology, is they have an agent that weaves into the operating system. So if your computer or phone acts weird, you can shut it down. You can't do that in the cloud for these workloads because there is nothing to insert an agent into. So in the cloud, you're left with identity and network. Like if you don't have those 2 covered, you're not going to be safe. And we need to move forward very quickly, experimenting with agentic AI systems in our personal lives and within our companies, but put the basics of security.
You were talking about Joshua Metcalfe's book, this concept of outcomes versus like daily process. About a year ago, you were talking about introducing this into Aviatrix, and that it was quite controversial. Is it still something you believe strongly in?
Still believe strongly, even more strongly, with the environment that we're in right now, that your attention on a detailed basis on your daily habits is the most important thing. Just going back to, there's a new Open Cloud-like announcement coming in the next week that's going to reorient our entire world. So what can you focus on? We've made progress. What I find with that philosophy, it's like agile development, is it creates higher discipline. It's easier to be focused on the outcome. It's actually lazier to be focused on the outcome. Because there's so many excuses on why you don't achieve the outcome. It's like, yeah, I know my outcome was to ship this code by this time or to book this much revenue as a sales rep. I didn't achieve it, but for all these reasons, which are probably justifiable. Whereas the daily mastery, you have no excuses. but it requires you to be disciplined enough as an individual and a manager to really sit down and go through what are the critical tasks that are the foundation of you becoming unparalleled greatness in your job. And that's not easy. I feel like people are not rejecting the idea anymore, and embracing it more. There's just so much change that the only way I can navigate daily is focus on what was important for me to do today to become a better dad or better husband or better CEO or better evangelist for Aviatrix, and see that I make some incremental improvement on that today or not.
Excellence is a habit. So absolutely, I agree. This is really valuable.
Fabulous. All right. Well, thank you so much, Doug. Really,
Thanks,
really
Doug.
appreciate it.
We just love catching up with you.
It was so nice. It was. I'm just glad that this podcast is a vehicle for me to catch up with both of you guys.
All right, Meg, you ready to Leadership Corner?
You bet. Let's do it.
One of my biggest challenges is finding genuine space to think and learn. I set aside time for tough problems, but I'm not good at protecting it. It's always rushed, unable to step back and clear my mind. With AI making critical thinking even more important, how do you install a durable method for deep thinking, not just for yourself, but for your entire team? So, Meg, I was thinking you could tackle the for yourself part, and I will tackle the team part.
Ooh, okay. So this is a little bit harder because obviously this is a bit of a strength for me, and I tend to be a little cautious about telling people to follow my pattern when I have a strength. But I'd like to take a second to say, just from the thread, it feels to me like it isn't actually a problem of making time as much as it is clarity of what you're trying to do, and maybe even a little bit of a cognitive gap of prioritization. Because I think that if you don't solve for that first, you're really never going to fix it. It's like trying to figure out how to work out or trying to figure out how to do any other thing that you're just not that motivated to do. So the first things I would recommend are a few hacks on getting started on things. One hack, I think, is to, instead of trying to take that moment on the time you have blocked in your calendar to do big thinking, because maybe that's starting to feel like a bridge too far, I would use that first time to reflect on places you have done a good job of learning new things and building some strategic point of view about something for your business. Because I feel like if you spend a little bit of time recognizing where you are doing it, that might give you some clues on how to make it more sustainable. Are these things that are happening on your drive? Are these things happening when you're doing exercise? Are these things that are happening in moments of conversation? And if so, with whom? Like, where are you getting your insights today? And where are you getting your learning today already? Start there and focus on that. The second thing I would do is have a running scratch pad of things that you think you want to work on so that you get them out of the weight and into a place where you can decide when it makes sense to tackle them. So I keep track in a Notion, things that I want to learn or things that I want to do, especially if I know that I'm not going to get to them for a while, so that I reduce the weight and the burden on myself for not getting to it. And then lastly, of course, the tried and true, making sure that they're on your calendar in a place that aligns with your own energy for that kind of work. Oftentimes, if you put this on the calendar for times where you're personally tired or running low on gas, you probably don't have the right level of energy to apply to it. And that's probably a big part of why you're not getting to it, because it's slotted in a place and time that isn't conducive to that kind of work. Daniel Pink has a great book called When that helps you think about what types of work belong in what types of places for you. And I think that would be another place to look to say, am I slotting this in a place that I have any hope? You know, if I'm putting this in a time where I'm just back from a vacation and I have a lot that's stacked up, or at the end of my day when I'm already cognitively depleted. Like, these are things that'll get in your way of being able to do this kind of work in the first place. So I would say I would do a complete curious reset of evaluating what you're already doing and what things are getting in the way, and then asking yourselves, is there a way you can systematize a better approach? Maybe lower the bar, maybe giving yourself smaller slots, maybe raising it and giving yourself breaks and doing bigger chunks. Whatever it is, you have to figure out what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I think I always had like Saturday morning was my time. I would maybe like drop off earlier on Friday and then have like a couple hours on Saturday morning where I was fresh and didn't have distractions and could put my mind to it, just as a personal thing. Okay, so on the team front, I wanted to talk a little bit about offsites. It's really tempting to, pack an offsite with all sorts of different topics because there's so many things that you want the team to tackle and so many things that you want to get done. And I've certainly created such agendas and I've participated in them, but they are a disaster in terms of what you're really trying to accomplish, because what they end up being is rapid fire, no real discussion, and no real thinking. And there is also a byproduct of really kind of dividing the team, because it's, this person is like sharing their stuff, and then there's some questions, and then this person's sharing their stuff. And so it becomes a little bit more of a, like, it really highlights that people are running their own things and they're not really a team. What I've found is that if you really give a lot of space to a particular topic and you have like a go-in question, and in fact, on the agenda, you have what you consider way too much time. So you're like, oh my God, nobody's going to want to talk about this question for that long. Then you're probably actually going to get people to start thinking about it and to start collaborating and to start discussing. I think, Meg, you and I, we had, I think our best offsite was when we did something like this, and we kind of came up, and it's interesting to tie it back to the conversation with Doug, because we had all of these huge outcomes that we were trying to tackle, and we weren't really getting anywhere, and everyone was getting really frustrated. And so we like spent the time on, okay, like, well, what are the signposts? What are the milestones? What are the things that we can be doing on a daily basis, and who's going to be involved, and that sort of thing? And like, how can we start making incremental progress? And it got like everybody involved and everybody tackling the problems and really thinking about it. And it was like big stuff that we were tackling, even though like it, we kind of broke it down into smaller chunks. And so that I think is a great example of, bringing all the thinking together as a team rather than kind of pushing people apart.
And I would just say this takes practice. So back to Doug's point about daily habits, and but the only way you're going to practice it in a sustainable, durable way is if it's actually important to you. So maybe start there and invest in clarifying for yourself, is this truly the most important thing for you to do with your time, and why? And if not, maybe give yourself a little space. So that's my hope for you. What a joy to be able to connect with somebody you haven't seen in a long time, and to see the energy and the passion, and also to be reminded of the fact of like what we saw way back then, and how it's still there, because what we were really connecting to was Doug's ability to role model intellectual humility and collaboration and curiosity. So what a great opportunity. Let's invent the future together, everyone. I believe in us.
Let's make every day count.